was attacked by Egypt and Syria in 67. And so they defended and were able to claim land in war as happens.
There's just one thing wrong, actually two things wrong with what he just said. First, Israel was not attacked in 1967. Israel attacked Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. But let's just suppose for a second that what he said was not a lie, and that it was Israel that was attacked. Even so, in accordance with international law, Israel would still have absolutely no right to annex territory that it conquered through war. That is what is so ironic about these comments here, coming from a so-called liberal progressive who is in defiance of the standards of international law. Imagine that. A liberal progressive is in defiance of the foremost liberal progressive democratic governmental international body on the face of the earth, the United Nations. Along with that, the foremost judicial body, the International Court of Justice. Both of these institutions, and as well as every human rights organization that you can think of, all condemn annexed territory conquered via war. Once again, we have another progressive proving that old adage correct. Scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds.
People wrote in saying, David, you are simply biased because you're Jewish. Not religiously, I'm culturally Jewish, ethnically Jewish. I saw dozens of comments and got a handful of emails from people saying, they like me well enough, but on this issue I can't be trusted because I'm Jewish and therefore biased. This is a really scary right-wing argument that the right has used for decades to dismiss the opinions of people they don't want to listen to. It's a bad argument, and I'll tell you why. In whatever way I am biased for being Jewish, you would have to argue any Palestinian is also biased for being Palestinian.
This guy is making an incredibly disingenuous argument, and by doing so, he's sidestepping having to answer for any valid criticisms of his talking points. He's not even rising to the level of having a discussion about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He's shamelessly fabricating lies, like when he said that Israel was attacked preemptively
by
in the
Egypt
Six-Day
and
War
Syria
in
in
1967. He never retracted that claim. He shamelessly repeats Zionist propaganda, like he's doing so in this video. What he leaves out of his entire video is that he has bought hook, line, and sinker the edict of Zionist propaganda, that the Jewish identity and the Israeli government and its policies as a nation state are one and the same. They're the same thing. There is no difference. Notice how he frames the conflict.
So I guess you can't be Jewish or Palestinian to be able to comment without bias?
It's Jewish people versus Palestinians, not the apartheid regime of the Israeli government. It's Judaism itself against Palestinians. This is wrong, it's malicious, it's manipulative, it's devious. He's either woefully irresponsible, misinformed, and doesn't have enough moral courage to admit it, or he's simply a bold-faced liar. Either way, it's not a good look. Essentially, he is creating a straw man by centering the discussion to not be about the Israeli government's apartheid policies against the Palestinians, but about Jewish identity itself. And by doing so, he completely reframes the discussion to be about his victimhood for what he perceives as being discounted, silenced, rendered obsolete because of his Jewishness, which is now a weapon used against him by his own audience. And perhaps there are people out there that criticize him for his perceived bias as being a Jewish person. But if he were actually serious, he would respond to the actual criticisms of the Israeli government. Why is he only responding to the lowest common denominator? Why is he shamelessly conflating Judaism and Zionism as if criticizing or admonishing the policies of the Israeli government is somehow anti-Semitic? That is Zionist propaganda. Why is he ensnaring his listeners in a well-known logical fallacy and then masquerading as some victim? Oh, that's right, he's a progressive. He's taking a very rational position, the valid criticisms of the violent campaigns conducted by the Israeli government against Palestinians, and once again making it to be about him. Of course he's the victim.
I'm going to tell it the way I see it. I do every segment the way I see the story.
Ah, yes, the bleeding heart liberal dying on the cross for his progressive views, for his principled commitment to even-handed critiques of politics and foreign policy. Spare me. Is it any wonder that nowhere in this roughly 5-minute video do you see any mention or acknowledgement of the current and ongoing atrocities committed by the Israeli government, of which he so subtly, passive-aggressively endorses with his blue and white backdrop?
Okay, so this is a bummer. This is bad for the show.
This is the subtle, passive-aggressive, hand-waving, middle-finger act of defiance of a milquetoast neoliberal.
I knew that some of this was going to happen, but it's still a really disappointing and difficult thing.
Notice here, too, that it's not difficult and disappointing for the people that are the victims here, the Palestinians. It's not difficult and disappointing that their land is being taken from them. They're under siege. They are being occupied by a violent, brutal, unforgiving, savage force that is inducing state-sanctioned terror upon the population, and they are openly admitting it. That's not difficult and disappointing. What's difficult and disappointing for a liberal like David Pakman is that he has to lose a few Patreon followers. Let's not forget the real victim here. It's David Pakman.
What do you want me to say? Oh, you know what? I just lost $6 a month. I'm sorry. It wasn't a terrorist attack. It was legitimate resistance. No. I don't say things to my audience that I don't believe.
Watch him as he elevates himself to sainthood for his progressive, neutral stance on apartheid and ethnic cleansing.
I always do every story the way I see it.
Please, let's clap for him because he's so brave.
I have the view I have because I'm progressive.
I ask you, is there anything more liberal than centering yourself as the victim because in your defense of an apartheid state carrying out a massive genocidal terror campaign against an unarmed civilian population, you managed to lose a few Patreon followers?
The worst time to get a good deal is when you're losing a war. And at this point, it can't be said that Hamas is winning this thing for Palestinians. And if you go back to the 1947 partition plan, it was a 50-50 divide of the land, which at this point would be a fantastic deal, I believe, for Palestinians. They rejected it.
Can you believe those ungrateful Palestinians did not accept being colonized? The audacity. In 1947, the UN General Assembly approved a resolution partitioning the British Mandate of Palestine into a Jewish state which incorporated 56% of Palestine, with an Arab state retaining 44%.
It was a 50-50 divide of the land.
It was not 50-50.
They rejected it.
Were the Palestinians asked about this? Did they have a say in what was going to happen to their land? No. This predictably started a war between the newly founded state of Israel and the surrounding Arab states. In the 1948 war, 250,000 Palestinians were forced from their homes and they fled to the Gaza Strip. Today, more than 70% of Gazans are refugees from that 1948 war and their descendants. This is the good deal.
Fantastic deal.
This person is talking about.
They rejected it.
Does everybody read between the lines of what this person is trying to say? When an Israeli airstrike destroys a hospital, killing 500 innocent civilians as it did today, it's the Palestinians' fault. They should have accepted the terms of the agreement in 1948 and they wouldn't be in this mess.
The worst time to get a good deal is when you're losing a war.
Calling this a war is egregiously irresponsible. I cannot stress that enough. This is not a war. This is a genocide.
Would be a fantastic deal, I believe.
It would be like saying if the United States decided to annex the territory of Kansas and Nebraska for white European settlers, forcing the Native Americans out of that land and concentrating them into a camp in Oklahoma. Oh wait, that already did happen. But you know, if the Native Americans were granted one state in the United States of America,
at this point would be a fantastic deal.
That would be a fantastic deal today. Would anyone in their right mind today defend the American policy of apartheid towards the Native Americans, defend the ethnic cleansing, defend the genocide of the Native Americans today? No. Would anyone in their right mind victim shame the Cherokee, the Choctaw, the Sioux, the Chippewa, etc., for fighting back against colonialism? I don't think so. And yet, in essence, this is what this person is doing right now. This is just more liberal apologia in the service of power, in the service of empire. This take is not going to age well for this person.
Nixon ordered Cambodian genocide. Clinton sent cruise missiles to Sudan, people died. Obama gave the orders to do drone strikes. Reagan invaded Nicaragua in '85.